We are back with another episode of the Safe and Sound podcast, and now we're going to talk today about school safety and some of the things we're doing in this space, some of the folks and the experts who work for us to keep our kids safe in and around their school buildings every day of the school year. We're very fortunate to have with us some professionals who work in the school safety space. We have with us this afternoon Emily Torok, who's the Executive Director of the Ohio School Safety Center. Good afternoon, Emily.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
And we also have one of our folks who work with Emily at the School Safety Center. He's a mobile training officer, and really he is a hero. He's saved a life in the course of his duties in working in schools to keep our kids safe. We have Burke Engelhardt with us. And Burke, good afternoon. We're very fortunate to have you.
Good afternoon, Director.
And then one more special guest that we have who's going to join us to tell his story is Jaron Williams. And Jaron was a student at the school that Burke worked at. Jaron was involved in a shooting. He was wounded in a shooting, and Burke actually was able to intervene, give first aid, and save Jaron's life. So we're very fortunate and grateful, Jaron, that you were willing to join us this afternoon and tell your story. Good afternoon, Jaron.
Good afternoon.
All right, Emily, let's start with the School Safety Center. Tell us a little bit about the School Safety Center. What is it? When was it established? And what's the basic concept behind what you all do at the School Safety Center every day?
So Governor DeWine created the Ohio School Safety Center in August of 2019, but I'll tell you that his school safety experience started far before that, even back to when he was the Attorney General. He had a working group and a school safety task force that came up with recommendations for school safety. So one of the first initiatives when he came into his first term of office was really how can we help improve school safety across the state? So he really challenged us at the very beginning. We went out and had some working groups, tried to figure out what schools and first responders actually needed when it came to the school safety space. And we learned that a lot of really great federal, state, and local partners were doing incredible work in school safety. But one of the issues was that schools weren't aware of that awesome work that was going on, so they couldn't take advantage of it. So one of the things that we were able to do is learn from other states. Director Wilson, you were right alongside me in that effort to create the School Safety Center, but we talked to some other states about best practices and really what could work for Ohio, and came up with this model of a one-stop shop for all things school safety, a central clearinghouse for anything we could possibly need in the school safety space. And Governor DeWine said, I want people waking up every day thinking about how we can improve school safety, and that's exactly what he did. So that executive order in August of 2019 created the School Safety Center. It also created a multidisciplinary group that meets quarterly to talk about school safety, the issues and gaps. So we're constantly improving our resources, but that focus also had to be comprehensive. We focus on both physical and emotional safety and provide free supports, training, and resources for schools and first responders to prevent, prepare for, and respond to different acts of violence.
And well, you're right. You and I were there at the very beginning, and Governor DeWine came into office in January of 2019, and we sat down with the governor within probably the first 3 weeks of him taking office. And he brought in a couple of his senior advisors, and he said point blank, he's like, look, I am concerned that we're not doing enough in this state to keep our kids safe. He said, I don't have a full picture for what we're doing, and I want to make sure that we are engaging in best practices so that when parents send their kids to schools every day, they can have faith that those kids will be protected. So you and I actually went out to a conference in Minnesota where we talked about all things school safety. And this was after a couple months of kind of researching how we did things in Ohio. And we met with experts from all over the country. We were blessed to have the opportunity to kind of hear what other states were doing, what was working well, what might not be working so well in those other states. And we sat down and kind of sketched out at that conference, really I think on a napkin, if we were to do school safety in Ohio, really to the best standard that we could, what would it look like? And that's kind of where the concept for the School Safety Center was born. We took it back to the governor and we told him what we had learned. We told him what we were thinking. The governor's a big idea kind of guy. He liked the idea of bringing all of the resources that were associated with keeping our kids safe into kind of one spot, bringing in experts in the field to advise and help schools with this issue. And again, he signed the executive order creating the School Safety Center. And as you said, he wanted that School Safety Center staffed with experts who really their only mission every day was to wake up and keep our kids safe. So that was the genesis of it. And you were quickly named. You came out of Homeland Security. You were quickly named as the executive director of the School Safety Center. And I just cannot say enough about the work that you've done over there. Tell us about some of the initiatives, some of the things you do day to day over the School Safety Center to keep our kids safe.
Well, I'm very blessed to have an incredible team, and I believe that all of the credit goes their direction. You'll never find me saying that I did anything. It's the team did some really awesome work. They're the ones who carry out our incredible initiatives from day to day. So we do a lot of behavioral threat assessment training. It's kind of one of the big things going around the school safety space right now, looking to see if there is a threat that comes in and the student that made the threat really had the intent and the means to carry out the act is what we're looking for in behavioral threat assessment. So bringing together a multidisciplinary team of school counselors, school resource officers, first responders, administrators, teachers, and really identifying, looking at that individual, do they have both of those things? If they don't, what intervention supports can we put in place? What sort of mental health resources? Maybe they need to talk to somebody. Maybe there's something going on in their home life that needs to be addressed. How can we help support this child, this student, to really get them to where they need to be? Because maybe they didn't really mean what they were saying when they joked about a threat, but there's no such thing as a joke these days. So behavioral threat assessment is one of the huge initiatives that we have going on.
And that is a hot topic. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, look, a kid gets mad and just pops off at the mouth, says something they may not really mean. That doesn't necessarily mean that kid's going to carry something out. But you have to be 100% on it. The schools have to be 100% on it and looking at whether or not that threat is a valid threat to the other students in the staff. And you actually went out and shopped around across the country really to find there's curriculums, there's ways to do it. I know the United States Secret Service, they're very good at threat assessment. There's the University of Virginia model. Tell us a little bit about what we use and what we take through Ohio schools.
So we actually meet schools where they're at. So schools have the ability to choose what threat assessment model they have. And like you mentioned, there are plenty of great models out there. There are just nuances in between them of what's different. As long as they have a threat assessment team in place, as long as they get their training done, it doesn't matter to us what model they have as long as they are taking the actions necessary. So you'll find that our school safety liaisons are trained in multiple models. So the National Threat Evaluation Reporting Office is one of our great partners with the Department of Homeland Security. We're trained in theirs, as well as CSTAG, so Dewey Cornell's model. So we're able to offer kind of a suite of services of exactly what schools would like. And if they want the U.S. Secret Service to come in, we will coordinate that to get them their free training. The key word here is free training, and also what the schools want and need. We're tailoring everything to their specific needs.
Excellent. So in addition to threat assessment, I know one of the things that we've talked about over the last couple of years is physical security in the schools. So making the schools more safe across the board, harder to get into, easy to monitor, that kind of stuff. Can you talk a little bit about what the governor's done in that space with respect to helping locals basically shore up their ability to keep their buildings safe?
Absolutely. So the governor was integral in getting over $200 million of physical safety grant funds to K-12 schools, as well as about $10 million to higher education institutions to shore up their safety. One of the things that he asked us was, how can we get the bare minimum safety and security standards put in place at these schools? How can we help them do that? And the first step before you ever use any of these dollars is a security and vulnerability assessment, also known as a site assessment. Our mobile training officers, our school safety planners can offer this for free to schools, but we also suggest they partner with local law enforcement. So we bring them in to really foster that strong relationship and walk through the schools, walk around the schools, and really assess, are your safety and security solutions in place the best that they could be? These could be low cost, no cost, high cost solutions. It's kind of a variety of things, but it's also policies, procedures, and trainings that they could improve in order to keep their campuses safe. If you think of shutting a door, making sure a door is locked has been a very important subject of debate. Really focusing on your access control to your facility, who can access it during and after hours. So we provide that as a free service to our schools. We'll come conduct a security and vulnerability assessment. We'll bring in local law enforcement so they can also provide their expertise at the local level since they are the ones responding. And then we were also able to offer that grant funding for the things they found that were maybe low cost, mid cost, high cost options that they needed to secure their facilities. And Governor DeWine made sure that there was enough money to meet every K-12 application that we had.
Yeah, that's great. We know without a doubt the best way to deal with or address school violence is to prevent it before it happens. And part of that is making sure that kids who go to our schools know how to get a threat. If they hear a threat or know about a threat, how to get that threat to a trusted adult. Can you tell us about some of the work you're doing in that space?
Anonymous reporting solutions, one of the best things that you can have when it comes to safety. Between that and trusted relationships, that is the absolute key. There is no security solution, there's no technology that is going to be able to do that for you. Our students, our staff, our community members, they hear a lot, especially our students. They hear peers, they hear outside community members, they're on the internet, they know what everybody's posting, and they are our best asset when it comes to safety. If students feel comfortable sharing with somebody in their school or an anonymous reporting solution, something that's suspicious to them, some concern for safety, then we'll be able to address it before it ever becomes a real issue. So anonymous reporting solutions are required in our K-12 schools, our public schools across the state, but we also strongly encourage the private schools. And this is something that they can implement for free, thanks to the state. We have the Safer Ohio School Tip Line that you can call, text, put something on a web form now on our website, or even a smartphone application for the Safer Ohio School Tip Line to report concerns for safety. We'll get it to first responders, to the schools, and we'll really intervene and address the concerns before they become issues. That's a free service, and it's anonymous.
Look, we go all over the state, you at the School Safety Center, the governor, and the administration, and we tell parents and we tell kids that if you see something, say something so we can do something. And I think you've done a fantastic job of empowering kids to report any suspicious activity, any threats, potential threats, so that we can prevent these tragedies before they actually happen. Another thing that I've seen you do incredibly well over the School Safety Center is, look, you're not just a bunch of adults who are going into schools telling kids what they need to do or how to keep themselves or how they should be safe in their schools. You've done a fantastic job of involving the students in policy, listening to the students, and empowering them to really kind of change school culture. So talk to us a little bit about what you've done or the work that you've done over there with the students or including the students.
So we are actually on our second year of the Student Safety Advisory Council. We're very excited to have them. We actually have 16 students on that council, as well as about 15 students that were on our council last year that we're calling our alumni crew because they wanted to hang on for another year as seniors to help us out. But that's juniors and seniors that are at schools all across the state that help us do focus groups, advise us on what they think is the most important safety issues, and how to really talk to kids, how to talk to students about concerns for safety. What are the barriers for reporting information, and how can we reach them where they are? And as adults, we often think we know the answers to everything, and putting that student voice back in safety has been huge because they've proved us wrong on multiple occasions. And I'm so happy that they have, and they've been able to give us their feedback. We actually use them for multiple divisions at this agency, as well as some of our outside partners that do safety work, because we want to make sure that if we're doing a program, it's because the school or the students need it. We don't want to do something just for the sake of doing it. And their voices have been incredible. This year at our School Safety Summit, they actually presented their trifolds and their capstone projects to the governor, and one of which he immediately wanted to start up and run all across the state. So I think that's a testament to just how passionate these students are and how awesome their projects are, because they're solving real issues in our schools.
Look, you've done great work with these kids, and you annually are able to showcase, well, you do it more than annually, but you're able to showcase the work that you do across the state. Annually, at least, you're doing it in a summit where you bring people together from across the state, educators, school resource officers, experts who work in the field, and really kind of highlight best practices and trends in school safety. Tell us a little bit about your summit. When does it take place? How many people have you had to some of these summits? And if people are interested, what should they look for?
So our annual School Safety Summit is every summer, and it's usually towards the end of the summer. It's a free event that we host for anybody that wants to come. We actually have other states come to our conference too, which is great. We love our out-of-state partners. And this is for all disciplines in school safety. So you think when you host a conference, your typical audience might be 1 to 2 stakeholder groups. We have a ton. So we have school counselors, our school resource officers, our school nurses, school transportation, our educators, administrators, school board members, first responders, you name it. So creating a conference for all of those folks can be a daunting experience, but I will tell you, every year they help us make it better. They're always telling us what type of presentations they want, what trainings they want to hear. We'll talk about cybersecurity, bullying, restraint and seclusion, school climate, suicide prevention, you name it. But we bring them all together. We bring in the best experts we can find, as well as some of our schools that can actually showcase some of their best practices, which is really exciting. So I'll give you one quick example, but Lakewood schools, they were actually able to come this summer, and we actually are hosting another webinar with them on alternatives to discipline. So they've got a peer-to-peer mediation program, and then they also have this reset program that they do, which is really awesome. So instead of going to detention, you can opt into the reset program, and maybe you were getting detention because you were late to class, and they will work with you on time management and the different skills that you need developed in order to prevent this from happening again. So focusing on solving the issues as opposed to just disciplining you, which is fantastic. That's what we want schools to be able to do. And it's a very low cost / free program, which is awesome. So being able to highlight our awesome schools in the state during those summits is something that's really incredible. And we see typically about 1,200 to 1,400. I think this past year we got 1,800 at our conference, which is just incredible and a testament to our schools and first responders really being dedicated, especially during the summer, to school safety.
Yeah, it's a great conference. I've been thoroughly impressed by the quality of the presenters and just the number of people who come to partake in the information that you're putting out. Now, you alluded to this already. I believe that the secret to your success over there at the School Safety Center is the strength of your employees. And you hire, I don't know if eclectic is the right word, but you have a wide range of folks who work for you over there. Everything from Navy SEALs, veterans like Burke, you've got former police officers, you have former teachers and counselors. You just have an incredibly wide variety. You're not pigeonholed into any one area of expertise. So I want to take some time now and highlight one of those employees, Burke Engelhardt. Burke, we're so glad to have you here. If you could just tell us a little bit about your history. I know you're a military veteran. Talk about your military service and then how you ultimately ended up at the School Safety Center.
My history starts off as I started active duty back in 1992. I was a dental assistant, got out of the Army, and I kind of missed it, so I went back into the National Guard, and I became a tanker, M1 Abrams. Used their college money to go to college. They paid for my tuition to get my bachelor's degree in business management. And then my wife told me one day to take my mess and turn it into my message. So she encouraged me to go into education. So with that, I started off as most people do, as a substitute, learning everything, how to be a teacher and so forth, like on the fly. And that's what took me to John F. Kennedy as a long-term substitute, as a Algebra 1 coach. And that's where I met Jaron. Because of the events that happened, and we'll talk about that later, it kind of brought me to getting out of education and continuing on with my personal education, getting my master's degree. And I saw that the position here was open up as a mobile training officer. One of the requirements was being a veteran, and I wanted to bring my talents to Emily.
Let's talk a little bit. What you're hired here as a mobile training officer. What do you do day to day for the school safety center as a mobile training officer?
We meet primarily with the schools all across I'm in Region 5, Zone 3, which is Ashtabula, Trumbull, and Mahoney County. And we meet with the administrators, local law enforcement, teachers, and so forth. Everybody has the same goal in mind, is to keep the kids safe. And we try to collaborate with everybody to see how that's possible. One of my job descriptions is doing the security and vulnerability assessments, going to see like where the schools can improve physically. Ryan is my counterpart in that area, so he's doing the vulnerabilities of CSTAG and so forth. And then on the other side of my coin is mobile training officer is the asset program, which empowers the school board locally to make the decision if they want to arm the school staff.
And that part involves actually doing the training with some of the school staff, including basic firearms use all the way up through scenario-based training. And we actually are offering a suite of advanced training in that space as well, correct?
Correct. The advanced is kind of like your home field advantage. If your worst day is going to actually become realized, this is going to help you realize and try to prepare for how are you going to do it. So, we can take them to the range all day long, and we can, show them how to use the firearms and everything else like that. But until they are actually able to see, what they would have to do in their school, it puts everything in perspective.
And unfortunately, in your time up there in the Cleveland area, working in the schools before you got out to get your master's and come work for us, you saw some tough things in the schools, didn't you?
Correct. 2016, 2017 wasn't one of my favorite years. I had 10 students shot and 4 perished in their community, whether it be from gang violence, drug violence, or whatever. Jaron is one of those students that was one of the 10 that were shot.
And when you began working in the school as that sub, and then ultimately in the schools full time, you came to that with some knowledge of first aid, correct? You knew how to treat wounds from your time in the military. Is that correct?
Correct. My training came from the Combat Lifesaver before I got deployed in 2008, 2009. We were taught how to resiliency training, and then also to Combat Lifesaver, which is a 40-hour first aid, EMT, how to treat a gunshot wound.
And I imagine mentally you prepared yourself to use those skills on deployment. I can't imagine when you picked up a job as a teacher, you envisioned that you actually would end up using those skills in the nature of your job as a teacher.
Correct. I always sit there and I tell the people I train, I've served 22 years in the military and 5 years in education, and never before would I ever thought I would have to use my first aid training to treat a gunshot wound outside of my school. So it's 22 years military. The only time I had to use it was as an educator.
So let's take you back, Jaron. You're still with us, right?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let's introduce Jaron, and then we're going to go back to February 10th, 2017. Jaron, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? How old are you now? And where'd you go to school?
Well, first and foremost, my name is Jaron Williams. I'm 23. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I went to school at John F. Kennedy at the time, February 10th, 2017.
When you were at John F. Kennedy back then, did you play any sports? What'd you do for fun? What kind of stuff were you into?
Yeah, I was all-time athlete. I played basketball, football. I was in the robotics club. I did a lot of different activities as far as school related.
Okay. And before February 10th, 2017, did you know Burke? Did you know him from school? Were you in any of his classes that he was subbing or teaching for?
Yes, before he just came in as a substitute, so he might come in about every other couple of weeks or so to sub in for a teacher. But then I think the following school year, we needed teachers, and he decided to come full time. So he was a full time teacher there. And me and Mr. E, we always had a good relationship. He was always a great teacher, so that he really fit in with the kids. So it kind of like fit best for him to stay.
Good. Let's go back to February 10th, 2017. There's an incident where you end up getting shot. And if you could, walk us through what happened, what led up to you getting shot and Burke having to intervene.
All right, so on that day, it was pretty much after school. It was after school fight occurring, actually, between some of my friends. And as the fight was occurring, I guess one of the students had an older brother come up to the school, and at this point in time, he started shooting, and I noticed I got shot, so I ran, and I ran across the street back towards the school, and as I ran into a few students, I told them to call for help, or 911 us, and a lot of them just panicked. They start screaming and falling out and stuff, so I kind of just dropped to the ground, and as I dropped to the ground, a police officer actually pulled up, and he really didn't do much. He just turned his lights on and just stood over me. And as a lot of people, it's a crowd starting to gather. Mr. E, I can't thank him enough. He came out of nowhere, really, and he came and he applied pressure on my leg. He let me know like he about to apply pressure, so it's gonna hurt a little bit. But at that point in time, I was out on the ground for about a couple of minutes, so I kind of thought I was gonna succumb to my injuries. But when he came, I felt a lot safer, and he came and he applied pressure, and then all the way into the EMTs came. He even snatched the tourniquet out of their hands and applied it to my leg himself. So I could never thank him enough for what he did for me. They said I lost a lot of blood, and I probably could have lost my leg if it was any more closer to an artery or something.
So, Jaron, did you know? Did you know?
Say thank you, Mr. E.
Yeah,
You're welcome.
Did you know that you had been shot right away, or did it take a second, and where in your leg had you been shot?
I actually know I got shot right away. I was actually the target of the shooter, just by how close I was in proximity to the person with the gun. And I was shot on my thigh, my left thigh, the upper thigh part. It went straight in and out. But also they didn't know if I was shot multiple times because he kept shooting. And then they said once you get shot once, you really don't feel every bullet that hits you. But luckily I was only shot one time. But they couldn't tell because I had an entrance and an exit wound. So they just said I got shot twice.
Did you say this was from across? Was this across the street from the school where it happened?
Yeah. So when we got out of school, we walked down to school. We usually go to Burger King every day. That's where we typically get our lunch from and stuff, and hang out at the school. And as we was walking down the street, it was already a crowd across the street. So we weren't thinking nothing of it. And then it was an incident earlier in the school day where some kids was talking about fighting and this, that, and the third. And I guess he came up there with the intentions to fight, but he knew his brother had his protection, I guess. So once the fight occurred, I guess he felt safer to fight outside of school versus in the students fighting inside of school. And we walked across the street, and that's when the fight had started. So yeah, when I got shot, we was a little bit down the street. We was about next door to Burger King, so it was about a good couple feet away from the school.
And then when you got shot, you head straight back to the school trying to get help?
I actually couldn't even make it to the school. I ducked for cover behind a car, and then I took off running once I felt like I was safe enough, but I ended up collapsing like when I got to the plaza or a little bit down the street from the school's library. So I couldn't make it all the way back to the school.
So I'm going to pick up now with Burke. Burke, you're working February 10th, 2017. How do you first become aware that something's going on, that there's been a shooting, and what do you do?
Like Jaron said, there was a fight earlier before the last period of school. The vice principal, Sean Spencer, was taking care of that, given the disciplinary stuff like that. And I thought, all the nonsense was done for the day. And then, so I was like walking back to my room and talking to a couple teachers about the fight and what was happening. And next thing you know, I hear over the walkie-talkies is there's a crowd forming up by Burger King. And next thing you know, I hear shots fired, shots fired, shots fired. And at that point in time, I started running, and everybody's like, don't go out there, they're shooting. I looked behind me, and Tim McAtee was right behind me. And Emke, she's like, don't go out there, they're shooting, you can't go out there. And it's just like, my babies are out there. So like Jaron said, it's just like out of nowhere, always happens, Mr. E's right there. And I run out there, and I see the crowd, and I see Jaron like hobbling and falling to the ground, and I see him holding his thigh. Also, too, at the same time, I saw a hole in his sweatpants. He had gray sweatpants, and he had like this big red spot on, the inner thigh. And instantly, it's just, my medical training went straight into right into it. And as I was, applying pressure, Jaron was a little vocal. I mean, he understood. I looked down, I see him, and it's just like, oh my God, that's Jaron. It's just like, this is one of my students. This is one of my babies. This is one of the kids that kids that I love. And I looked, and then next thing you know, another kid, Javon, like he's hobbling over. He got shot in the ankle too. I'm like, what's going on? I knew there was a shooting. Tim McAtee was attending to Javon. I was, applying pressure to Jaron, and we had a fire department right next door, and I'm like, where are these people? It's just like, why aren't they here? I made it before them. I'm just, I'm on foot, I'm running. And here I come to find out they're on another call, and one of the, responding EMS units had to come from across town. So it was a good, I think, 5-10 minutes before they even showed up. And like Jaron said, like I show up there, and like police are coming up there, and they're just like watching me. I'm like, why aren't you doing anything? Why aren't you helping me? And it's just like, it's like spotlights on me. I felt like Tupac, all eyes on me. It's just like, so I had to do what I had to do.
So were you able to pretty quickly visualize the injury and start treating? And I mean, do you have a first aid kit? How are you even working your way through treating the situation?
I was doing triage. Just basically, I saw the entrance wound. I didn't really see the exit wound. I knew all I had was my hands. I asked for a tourniquet. They handed me a pedio, like a really small baby tourniquet, and I was like, this isn't gonna work. And so like, I just kept continuing applying pressure, and I really felt sorry for Jaron, because like, that's, anybody's been shot, I mean, that's painful. And not only is it painful, but then you got, some big fat guy, pushing down on your thigh to stop the bleeding. It's just like, it's just pain just multiplied.
So how long did it take before you were able to turn his care over to EMS paramedics?
It was at least 5 minutes.
Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. So what you're doing there is what we know, it's called bystander intervention in an emergency medical situation. It's where somebody who is at the scene, who may not be a professional firefighter, paramedic, EMS, steps in and provides support. And what you know from your training is time matters in these situations. And the more time that elapses before that care is applied or before first aid is given, the greater chance that the patient isn't going to survive.
Correct.
So you were able to step in and fill that gap until those paramedics get there. And was he bleeding pretty heavily?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it was just gushing right out. I knew for a fact that he had like a femoral artery, because like, I mean, it was just, I've never seen bleeding like that.
Okay.
And I just knew, just like you said, it's just like time matters, and just anything to slow it down or to stop it is just needed.
Jaron, what are you doing these days? I thought I heard some family in the background there for a second. You have family? What are you doing in life?
I had my daughter yesterday, so I'm sitting in the hospital room with her right now. I work at Walmart, and I'm currently going to school at Purdue for safety administration.
And I missed that first part. Did you just say that you had your daughter yesterday?
Yes, I did. My daughter was born at 11/19, 10/23, 23.
And is this your first child?
This is actually my second child.
Okay.
I have a son. He's 2 years old. His birthday is actually the 15th, so we're not too far apart.
Okay. As you sit there in that room with your daughter who was just born yesterday, do you credit Mr. E, our Burke, for saving your life and the fact that you're there today?
Absolutely. I thank him. I really can't thank him enough, really, because I don't know what could have happened. I lost a lot of blood that day, and it was scary. So I thank him every time I see him.
Hey, listen, man, we appreciate that. And you know what we ask of you is just go out there every day, man, and be the best version of yourself that you can be, and help those around you, man. And it sounds like you are. It sounds like you're out there doing it. Real quick, I'm going to go back to Burke here in a second, but the final question I have for you is Burke talked a little bit about the violence in and around that school, and that was a tough year, that he had 10 students shot in those couple years that he was there, and 4 that had actually died. Tell us a little bit about the violence in that school and how you were able to get away from it, or were some of your friends able to get away from it? Talk a little bit about the violence you saw at that school.
I mean, from my experience, I could just being a student there. I mean, any student can tell you, like, it could get pretty violent. I know a lot of people, like Mr. E said, we lost a lot of students. I lost a few friends that year. It's just, I don't know, I feel like it could be more improvement, like what the lady was saying, with counselors and even more security. I feel like it just needs to be somebody there to like interact more with the kids. Like, as far as like Mr. E was a great teacher. Everybody loved Mr. E. He interacted with the students. He kind of knew, like, when you was having a bad day or something wasn't right or going on. As far as the violence goes, I mean, it was pretty violent. It was fights every day, typical use. It wasn't really as much like gun violence until like my later years in the school. And I just feel like that just came with people getting older and tired of being bullied or fighting, and they just think that that's the best way to go about things. But in reality, you just hurting yourself and others.
Right. Jaron, I cannot thank you enough for giving us a few minutes this afternoon and actually taking some time away from that new baby of yours to spend with us. I got just a couple final questions for Burke, or Mr. E. Burke, how do you apply this experience that you had with Jaron and that year that you had in that school? How do you apply that to your experiences today when you go out and you work with our schools? How has that helped you? What does that do to make you better at your job today?
I see, like, when I go out there, I can see all the different aspects of what the schools need. And one of the things that I know that we're pushing is everything should be down towards the local level. We need to allow the school districts to make their decisions, what's best for them. So, like, I talked to, like, the rural school districts. They're like, oh, we need this and that. Their needs are a lot different than what the inner city needs are. And I think Governor DeWine allowing that to happen and making the decisions at the lowest level is probably one of the best decisions to happen, because, like, I mean, we're all the smartest people here, but, like, we could talk to Eric Gordon, who was the old CEO of CMSD, we could tell him that what they're doing, down in Lucasville, but he's going to be like, well, that doesn't pertain to me. Another thing is I always try to talk about like relationships. Me and Jaron, I still talk to my students, Tyrone Barnes, unfortunately we had one of my students, Rayshawn Atkins, he perished this summer, and that was a tough one. It's just like, as he sent me a text on Father's Day, Happy Father's Day. It's just like, it's heart-wrenching. Percy Wells, he was one that perished. Devin Price, he was one that perished in 2016. It's building that relationship. We can send out all this money out to the school districts, but there's nothing that's going to make a bigger impact than relationships between the teachers and the students, the teachers in the community, the teachers and the administration. It's just everybody building their relationships. And that's one of the things I push is, autonomy into your school and then the relationships between everybody.
Yeah, I think you made a great point. I've heard the governor say this many times. We are a home rule state, and the local governments, the local schools are uniquely positioned to make the decisions that are best based on their needs, their values, their belief system that they have at that local level. And our job isn't necessarily to come in to tell people what they have to do. Our job a lot of times is come in and listen to what their issues are, listen to what the problems are, and to then assist. Bring resources, leverage expertise, do what we can to try to help. So, I cannot appreciate enough what you've done, what you did for Jaron, and what you're doing for the School Safety Center here in Ohio, and we appreciate having you on the team. Emily, I'm going to kick it over to you. If you could tell us a little bit about what School Safety Month is and what our theme for School Safety Month this year is, and we'll finish up here shortly.
Yeah, so I would say it builds directly on what Burke or Mr. E, I might start calling him that, sounds like mystery, but it really builds upon what Burke said, and relationships for safety, having trusted relationships. That's the most important thing that we can do to keep our students safe. If a student feels comfortable talking to you, they're going to report if they see anything concerning for safety. And it might not necessarily be a threat of violence. It might not necessarily be a physical fight. It may be that they're struggling or a peer is struggling or something's going on at home that they don't know how to handle. I'll give you an example from our tip line. We had a student that their grades were not going in the direction they needed to be, and they were worried that they were going to let their parents down, and they didn't know who to talk to about that. And of course, we want to make sure they have people within their schools every day that they see that they can talk to, as well as our anonymous reporting solutions and things like the 988 Suicide Prevention Crisis Line. So relationships for safety was our big School Safety Month theme. So we're encouraging our schools and our first responders to build very strong relationships with their students and take that extra couple of seconds to get to know your student outside of the classroom, get to know what they're interested in, if they like sports, robotics club, you name it, and really take an interest in their life. Because I will tell you that I have had the best conversations with the students over the past 2 years on our council, but we also have a high school student, and I adore her, and I love listening to all the things she has going on. I love hearing about homecoming and everything like that, and that is why she enjoys coming to our office, is because she knows that she can talk to us about anything, and she knows that we're here and we support her in all aspects of her life, not just for school.
Emily and Burke, thank you very much for taking a few minutes of your time this afternoon to share your expertise with us here and with the citizens of Ohio. We've talked about this a couple times during this podcast. You truly epitomize the governor's aspirations to staff the Ohio School Safety Center with a group of professionals who are absolutely dedicated every day to the sole mission of keeping our kids safe. And we just cannot thank you enough for what you do, both as individuals and as a group over the School Safety Center, to keep Ohio safe and sound.
The Safe and Sound podcast is recorded by the Ohio Department of Public Safety. Links and more information can be found in this episode's show notes. And for more information on all 9 divisions of the Ohio Department of Public Safety, visit publicsafety.ohio.gov.